done here is I've taken a look at the projected revenue growth over the course of the next 5 or 6 years in Latin America based around wireline and mobility. Now, the first thing that comes out to me as an analyst is that this is a staggering amount of money in revenues. I mean, if I'm perfectly frank, there's more zeros in this chart than I had on my grade 11 report card. That's actually true, Claire, believe it or not. But the other thing, too, is the level of growth that we're seeing over the course of the coming 5 or 6 years. And you can see nearly 20%. That's a huge amount of revenues just being derived from mobility and wireline right off the top. And what about the associated services? What about the IT services, the outsourcing going in to support telecommunications? Well, we see as well that there's also growth in that too. And the latest projections that Ovum has going through the course of the next 3 years is that that's going to be a significant amount of cash. Quite frankly, it looks like in excess of $2.5 billion. And what are some of the reasons behind this? Well, number one, Latin American telecommunications is being driven by more addressable national markets than ever. Regional middle class is growing as well, and we've seen this phenomenon in India, where middle class consumers are driving new consumption patterns that mimic and follow what we've seen in North America, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and those consumption trends are pushing the need for more telecommunications and more sophisticated telecommunication services around wireline, around mobility, internet service provision, as well as now what we're seeing much more in terms of smartphone technology. And what we know is that the more the telecommunications companies are going to be asked to provide these services, the more there's going to be a demand for outsourced services to support those very telcos. Claire, John, you both come to the table, obviously, with impeccable international credentials and a good understanding of LATAM. So you've seen my numbers, you've seen the analyst view of the world. Why don't you give us a sense from your own on-the-ground experience what your respective takes are in terms of the telco opportunity going forward in Latin America? John, I'll kick it off with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. We refer to it as the telco opportunity, but it is a services and solutions opportunity. We see day in, day out in talking to customers significant challenges that they have. Mobility is a great thing. Mobile technology, the arrival of the mobile internet, what it potentially brings marketers in terms of one-to-one marketing and knowing, with the addition of locational intelligence, who our customer is or who the customer is, where they are and when they're there. So there's tremendous advantage there. But at the same time, as you can imagine, security challenges, security over data, security over devices. So what we see at Columbus is a number of challenges that face CIOs in the C-suite of our customers, whether they're in medium business, large business, or government. And what excites us is the fact that with the solutions that we've developed, all the way from the desktop to the wide area network, the local area network, to infrastructure, to security, that with those solutions, we can really enable our clients and our customers to take advantage of these new technologies.
Verizon's been able to capitalize on its cyber trust arm for our security, our Terramark for our data centers, to really provide what we feel strongly is best in class, both from an in-region perspective, but also leveraging those needs and that consistency around the world. So as our national multinationals, or Latin multinationals, continue to grow, their experience can be reciprocated in a globally consistent way, because from an infrastructure perspective, we've built that infrastructure in cloud, data center, security, networking, global MPLS networks around a consistent methodology. So the experience you have in Bogota is the same you would have in Brooklyn that you would have in Beijing.
Do either of you have a view on which countries are perhaps that much more straightforward in terms of doing business from a services and solutions standpoint versus ones that perhaps are emerging that direction but might not quite be there at the level you would imagine yet?
I see, I'm coming out of Canada, I see more commonality of what, if you're looking at medium business, the definitions of segments might be a bit different, but what customers are looking for and how they're using technology. One of the best examples, I was doing some work prior to Columbus on mobile commerce, and digital signage and how the opportunity exists with digital signage to use locations as a marketing medium. And one of the first interactions that I had with our financial vertical leader, the individual who leads the banking and financial sector, is the number one thing I need is how do I connect the data that's coming out of mobile devices to digital signage so that banking locations, ATMs, and kiosks can now become a marketing medium for the banks. So again, I know that there are, I came in with a certain number of perceptions and expectations, but I think the key thing that I see is the needs of a bank and the needs of a government, and for using government, e-services to constituents, rural broadband, all of those services seem to be very consistent. The needs are consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think, obviously, client growth, market growth, I heard earlier Mexico, Brazil, I mean, they're very significant countries for us. But I would say from a consumer perspective, I mean, really think about what's happening right now. We have this consumerization of IT happening, right? And the enterprise business lead has the same tolerance that he has on a smartphone that he has for his applications in the enterprise. Mm-hmm. So I think that as we become more of a true IT-focused, everyone driven from their smartphones, this ability to say that the needs are different in Venezuela than they are in Brazil, I think we all start to have consistent needs and requirements, and our clients, our end-user clients, are the same demanding. I think there's always nuances. I think that's why partners that have broader relationships with governments and regulatory authorities and local partners kind of help mirror that and provide that seamless experience.
Hi, I have a question with regard to stability. So when you're looking in Latin America, are there any markets that you see that are just way ahead of others with regard to stability? And then are there any markets that are giving you heartburn at this particular point?
There's always challenges, especially in developing economies, but I can tell you that the partners that are in those countries understand the need to compete on a global level and are doing the investment in the infrastructure to get it there.
Yeah, I think that's the key point. The needs are the same or similar. The words that we hear from customers, we need to grow. Help us do it in a fluid and frictionless way. Yes, security is an issue in some markets, and that creates some interesting solution opportunities. It's when you think of infrastructure as a service, clearly if physical security is an issue, where you put your servers is important. But again, I come back to the needs are so similar, the language, the urgency, and again, I think of some of the markets we're in, Colombia, the growth rate, the M&A activity that has customers sitting across the table from us saying, how can you help? How can you enable us?
But I want to ask about Mexico, one of the most interesting markets right now because of the deregulation and basically, whether we wanted to call it a monopoly or not, but basically we have a situation now where competitive carriers can come in for local wireline. Huge opportunity for both of your organizations, so I can only imagine you've got to be looking at it.
We always go where our clients need us to go, and we've been in Mexico, and we have multiple partners and offerings in Mexico. We have our own POPs, we have our own network, and then we use, obviously, multiple carriers to keep the competitive pressures up as it relates to service needs and delivery. So we've been there, we're still there, and it is growing, and we continue to grow where our customers need us to be.
We've built relatively new networks across the Caribbean, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, 8 or 9 countries in Latin America. We've got a whole new suite of services, again, from the desktop to security to software. We're building our sales force. We're driving into the marketplace. There's lots for us to do. And again, the markets that we're in are growing. They're growing at fairly high rates, but we're also seeing tremendous demand for the type of service, the type of managed service that we're offering. So we've got a lot on the go.
It's great to say that we've got a fantastic opportunity for services and solutions in various parts of Latin America. But those really won't amount to all that much if we can't find the right people, if we can't keep those people, and we can't keep training them to make sure that they're as up to date as possible. So I'd like to know from both of you, from the standpoint of Columbus and Verizon, where do you stand? What do you do in terms of being able to make sure you can find the best people, you can keep them, and to throw it all into even more of a mix, that they're multilingual enough to communicate with the rest of the world?
It's a great question. I think I was just trying to calculate how much time in the last 4 months that I've been with Columbus, how much time I've put into recruitment, what I would call strategic HR, and I've got to believe it's at least a third of my time, if not more. I think that the war for talent is with our clients. The war for talent is with the competition in the marketplace. It's relentless, and it is forcing organizations like ours to be doing all the right things from a human resource standpoint. One of my mentors once said that he had this. The acronym was ABR: always be recruiting, always be developing, always be coaching. You can invest in network, and I know that with technology, you can invest in technology. There are refresh windows, there are cycles. Yes, the cycles are getting shorter, but with talent, it's relentless. It's always be, recruiting, retaining, coaching.
Yeah, and I would also say, it is always about that, having good HR, good recruiting, making sure you're in the universities, you're getting your brand out there, especially for Verizon, not having the brand awareness in all the countries of the world. We need to have that local branding. But I think it's also about, once the employee gets in, it's the training and development, it's the coaching, it's the career pathing, it's the education, development that we give. And Verizon has got an extensive curriculum of both, mandated kind of developmental training across all of our professional skills, engineering skills. We pay for certifications and ongoing education as part of our employment enhancement and benefits.
Obviously, there's a heavy emphasis around technology, engineering, mathematics. How are the universities responding in terms of being able to fulfill you with the employees with the skill set that you require? Are they responding in kind? Is there any fallback, or are they ahead of the game?
What I've seen thus far is, there's great talent coming out of the universities. I think that the challenge is there's also tremendous demand, and across all elements. I think the trick, frankly, I think our strength in terms of Columbus and I assume Verizon, is that it's fairly hard, particularly in the mid-market, and even for larger companies, to maintain depth across every element of the, not just telecom, but the ICT value chain. Mm-hmm. So I think, there's some great supply, but the challenge is the demand is I think, much greater.